Welcome back to the news in full. Addressing the Cairo Summit for Peace held in the new administrative capital, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi declared that disintegrating the Palestinian cause without a just solution is beyond the realm of possibility, and in all cases, it will never happen at the expense of Egypt. The details.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi called for international protection of innocent civilians and warned of the dangerous humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip in attempts to force evacuation of Palestinians. President al-Sisi made the remarks during inauguration of Cairo's Summit for Peace, which kicked off on Saturday in the new administrative capital as part of Egypt's effort to support the Palestinian cause. Addressing the summit, the head of state said, "We are meeting in Cairo at the challenging time that tests our humanity before our interests and the depth of our faith in the value of human being and in his right to live. The principles we profess to support are also called into question and scrutinized in these difficult times." The president stressed that all the peoples of the whole world, not only the peoples of this region, are following with eyes wide open our stances at the historical moment. He highlighted that the summit also aims to address de-escalating the war in Gaza, pursue a ceasefire, and seek settlement of the long-standing Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In his address, President al-Sisi said Egypt condemns in the clearest terms the targeting, killing, and intimidation of all peaceful civilians. At the same time, Egypt is expressing its deep shock that the world is standing by idly while the catastrophic humanitarian crisis unfolds. The president further mentioned that 2.5 million Palestinians in the Gaza Strip are being subjected to collective punishment. They are living under siege and facing starvation and ferocious pressure of forced displacement through practice condemned by the civilized world. The president asked, where are the values of human civilization, what we have established over long millennia and decades? He added that the inaugural address to the 2023 Cairo Summit for Peace that form the very first moment Egypt has engaged in unyielding and vigorous efforts day and night to coordinate and deliver humanitarian aid and relief to the besieged Palestinians in Gaza. President al-Sisi went on to say that Egypt has not closed the Rafah land crossing at any moment. However, the repeated Israeli sharing of the Palestinian side obstructed its operation. Amid the severity of the circumstances on the ground, he agreed with the American president to operate the crossing on a sustainable basis under the supervision of the United Nations, the UNRWA, and the Palestinian Red Crescent. President al-Sisi said the world must never condone the use of human suffering to force people into displacement. Egypt has affirmed and is reiterating its vehement rejection of the forced displacement of the Palestinians and their transfer to Egyptian lands in Sinai, as this will mark the last gasp in the liquidation of the Palestinian cause, shatter the dream of an independent Palestinian state, and squander the struggle of the Palestinian people and the Arab and Islamic peoples over the course of the Palestinian cause that has endured for 75 years. President al-Sisi explained he will be mistaken in his understanding of the nature of the Palestinian people, whoever thinks that these proud, steadfast, and resilient people are willing to abandon their land. He stated it's clearly and unequivocally to the world and articulate in sincere terms the will of all Egyptian people, every single Egyptian, that the liquidation of the Palestinian cause without a just solution is beyond the realm of possibility, and in all cases it will never happen at the expense of Egypt. He added, Egypt has paid a heavy price for peace to prevail in this region. The president went on to say we are encountering an unprecedented crisis that necessitates utmost attention to prevent the conflict from expanding in a manner that compromises the stability of the region and undermines international peace and security. President al-Sisi concluded with a sending message of hope to the peoples of the world that tomorrow will be better than today.
And on the sidelines of the Cairo International Peace Conference, President al-Sisi held a number of meetings with the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, and the President of the European Council, Charles Michel. And addressing the summit, Jordan's King Abdullah II and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, along with other Arab top officials, condemned the ongoing Israeli bombing campaign underway in Gaza as an act of collective punishment and a war crime. The details.
Speaking at the Cairo Summit for Peace, Jordan's King Abdullah II denounced the global silence about Israel's attacks on the enclave and urged an even-handed approach to the Israeli-Palestinian dispute. He said the message the Arab world is hearing is that Palestinian lives matter less than Israeli ones, adding he was outraged and grieved by acts of violence waged against innocent civilians in Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel. The Jordanian monarch urged an immediate end to the war and the adoption of a unified position that indiscriminately condemns the targeting of civilians. Meanwhile, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas warned against the attempts to displace the Palestinian people from Gaza, the West Bank, and Al-Quds. He stated that the Palestinian people are facing brutal aggression by the Israeli occupation, warning that the cycle of violence is constantly renewed due to the absence of justice and neglect of the rights of the Palestinian people. Abbas asserted the two-state solution and ending the occupation according to a clear timetable is the solution to the current crisis. Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammad Shaya al-Sudani, for his part, said Baghdad rejects the emptying of the Gaza Strip because the Palestinians have no other place but their own land. He called for an immediate ceasefire and an exchange of prisoners to end the current conflict. Al-Sudani said that the situation would not have reached this point had UN Security Council resolutions been respected, an apparent reference to Israel's illegal settlement policies in the West Bank. Meanwhile, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for protection of civilians and the sparing of civilian infrastructure, including hospitals, schools, and UN premises, from the bombardment. Guterres pointed to the wider context of war, saying that the two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is the only realistic foundation for a truce, peace, and stability.
Still with the Cairo Summit for Peace, world leaders spoke about the Israeli government's duty to respect international law and to preserve civilian lives in Gaza, and for its military to show restraint, and stressed that the international community must avoid an escalation in the war and set a roadmap towards the two-state solution, which must have a clear time frame. The details.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres pleaded Saturday for a humanitarian ceasefire in the war between Israel and Hamas fighters that has devastated much of Gaza, demanding action to end to this godful nightmare. Guterres said the Palestinian enclave of 2.4 million people was living through a humanitarian catastrophe with thousands dead and more than 1 million displaced. In the opening session, Guterres had said that the grievances of the Palestinian people are legitimate and long after 56 years of occupation with no end in sight, but stressed that nothing justified the reprehensible assault by Hamas to Israeli citizens. He then stressed that those abhorrent attacks can never justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. British Foreign Secretary James Cleverly said he had spoken to the Israeli government about its duty to respect international law and to preserve citizens' lives in Gaza, and for its military to show restraint. Cleverly told the Cairo Peace Summit it is a must to work and to alleviate the suffering of the Palestinian people in Gaza, calling for discipline and professionalism and restraint from the Israeli military. Cleverly said the international community needed to work to prevent the situation in Gaza provoking a regional conflict. On her part, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said that the international community must avoid an escalation in the war between Israel and Hamas and set a roadmap towards the two-state solution, which must have a clear time frame. The Italian Premier met Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas before traveling to Tel Aviv to meet Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Turkey's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan urged for the current conflict to become, rather than a regional conflagration, a breeding ground for a just and lasting peace. And French Foreign Minister Catherine Colonna, for her part, told the summit a humanitarian corridor was needed to deliver aid to civilians, which she said could lead to a ceasefire.
And the presidency released a statement on the Cairo Peace Summit in which it said that at the invitation of the Arab Republic of Egypt, leaders, heads of governments and envoys of a number of regional and international countries met in Cairo on Saturday to consult and explore ways to advance efforts towards containing the aggravating crisis in the Gaza Strip and military de-escalation between the Israeli and Palestinian sides. The statement continued that Egypt, which took the invitation for the peace summit, expresses its deep appreciation to the countries and organizations that responded to the invitation despite time constraints. On this occasion, it confirms that it will spare no efforts in continuing to work with all partners in order to achieve the goals that called for holding the summit, regardless of the difficulties or the duration of the conflict. The presidency's statement concluded that Egypt will always maintain its firm position in support of Palestinian rights, believing in peace as a strategic and irreversible option until the vision of a two-state solution, Palestinian and Israeli living side by side, is realized.